Has had an amazing week. I've been glad to be back home after traveling last week. Actually, this weekend I'm going to be racing. So just for fun, nice little obstacle course race down in Massachusetts. Nothing too serious, but excited to get back out on the course and tackle some obstacles. This is actually the first time I'm doing this race. Called Savage Race. They have some, so there'll be some new obstacles I haven't seen before. So it should be pretty cool. Get to do a new race and spend some time with some friends, and then get to drive home and prep for my son's birthday party the next day. Always something going on, but should be a good weekend. I hope you all are going to be doing something fun this weekend as well. But this week I want to talk about something that it's just been coming up over and over again, just recently over the past few weeks for myself, just in conversations and stuff I've been reading online, etc. And it seems like kind of like a silly thing to even talk about, and that is, are vegetables good for you? It's silly because, well, I say it's silly, but there's some nuance here. As always, in any discussion, there needs to be nuance, but um, it's initially it might sound silly to you because most of us have grown up thinking vegetables are the pinnacle of healthy foods, right? Like if you're going to eat healthy, that whatever that diet looks like should always include vegetables. And I think for the most part, that's been the standard for everything, most diets, for quite a long time, up until very recently. And no matter the diet philosophy you chose, right, there was always this component of vegetables. Fruits and vegetables seem to be like that's the thing. That was kind of a staple in every diet philosophy you took a look at. Um, and then keto came around, and that kind of limited some vegetable intake, particularly if they are starchy vegetables like potatoes and some squashes and stuff like that. And then you get like really extreme keto advocates out there, and they're like, "Oh, you can't have a carrot or a beet, or your carbs need to be under 20 grams." And I find when you start to get to that level, like you start eliminating nutritious vegetables that are not harmful at all. And I understand that if you're doing a 20-gram keto diet, for medical reasons, that you have a very good reason to make sure your carb intake is that low. That's a different story. But if you're just doing it for health reasons, um, and you're eliminating nutritious vegetables like carrots and beets, I feel like that's probably too restrictive. So that's where it kind of started. And then I think, the next evolution of extreme dieting was, oh, we only need to eat meat, right? And then you started hearing people talk about how vegetables contain all these anti-nutrients and can do all these bad things to you if you consume them, and they don't, we don't need vegetables to get all the vitamins and minerals, that we want to eat, that we need. And so they're completely just like they're a backup food. Like we humans only ate them because there was no meat around, and if they didn't eat them, they were going to starve, and they were just like survival foods. And so you started seeing people eliminate um, vegetables from their diet. And then, of course, in some cases, these people, they felt better and they looked better and they performed better and all these things. And of course, when you start to see results like that, they start to become advocates of it. And then more and more people are like, oh, I eliminated, I'm no longer eating any vegetables, or I'm eating like very minimal amount of vegetables, and I'm so much better for it, and etc. And now this message of like minimizing vegetable intake has become somewhat prevalent, at least in the circles that I find myself, um, spending a lot of time in. And it's always kind of just perplexing to me because a few years ago vegetables were like fine, like you should eat as many vegetables as you want. And I think there is something to like if you eat, I'm not, I think if you eat any food, vegetable, meat, whatever, and you don't feel good eating that food, you shouldn't eat it, right? So like if having a giant bowl of vegetables gives you all kind of digestive issues, you shouldn't have a giant bowl of vegetables, right? Like you should try and figure out a quantity of vegetables that works for you. So I'm not saying that is the case that everyone needs to eat giant bowls of vegetables, regardless of how it makes them feel. But to the same degree, like I if I eat certain types of meat, like if I eat a very fatty cut of meat that's been slow cooked, and these are like meats that I really, dishes that I really like to enjoy. I really enjoy like something like an oxtail, or sometimes like a fatty cut of steak that's been like slow cooked for a long period of time. Any kind of like fatty meat that gets cooked over a long period of time and I eat that, I generally don't feel good afterwards. I like it. It tastes really good to me, but it doesn't make my stomach feel very well that night and the next day. And does that mean that all meats are bad for me? No, I kind of try and avoid that type of meat. Sometimes I choose to eat it and I pay the price for it, but sometimes for the most part I just avoid those types of meats, those cuts of meats and those that way of preparation, and I stick to the stuff that makes me feel good. And I think the same needs to be said for vegetables, right? Like if having, like I said, a giant bowl of vegetables makes your digestive issues, or you get weird skin problems or whatever, bloats you or whatever, it scale it back, eat the right amount, like, or choose different types of vegetables, etc., right? It's not that vegetables are bad for us, right? And I think we need to put this all in context, right? And if you're in the same sphere that I am and you're hearing a lot of messaging around the negative impacts of consuming vegetables, that's one thing. I think that we need to keep in context of like where the average person is in this whole discussion of improving their health and diet, right? I was walking down the street in New York City the other day. It was 7:30 in the morning, and I was walking out of my hotel to go to the venue the conference was at. And I looked over, and there's a diner, and there's a guy sitting down at 7:30 in the morning eating a giant slice of cheesecake. Now, are we going to tell that guy that who's eating the giant slice of cheesecake, no judgment, but he's eating cheesecake at 7:30 in the morning? I don't know. Maybe it was a special occasion. Who knows? But let's just say that's his every every week, every few days, he gets a giant slice of cheesecake at 7:30 in the morning. Probably not something you want to do. Okay. Are we going to tell that person that, in order to improve your diet, you can't eat vegetables anymore? No. If he replaced that cheesecake with a giant bowl of vegetables, he's much better off, right? Like we shouldn't be demonizing foods like like this that are subjectively healthy for most of the population. And considering what most of the population is already eating, if they replace those things with vegetables, they are much better off. Fruits and vegetables, right? Like it doesn't matter. Like that swap is always going to be a win, no matter who you are. Now, again, if after a while they figure out like they're eating whole foods and they figure out that, oh, these types of vegetables don't work for me, and they don't feel good for me, and they eliminate them, fine. But to start with, like, we shouldn't be sending the message out to the world that vegetables are evil, that they're not good for us, because in general most people are going to benefit from eating vegetables. And it's just, it's the journey of finding what's the right amount for you. And that's true of any food. That's true of meat, like I said, for myself. It's true of fruit. It's true of, starchy vegetables like potatoes. It's true of white rice and things like gluten and dairy and stuff like that. Like all these things work for some people in some degree, and some people can't have them at all. And some people can have a little, some people can have a lot. Everyone is individual, but there is no blanket statement that this food is bad for you 100% of the time, especially when it's a whole food. Like, yeah, okay, cheesecake, you probably don't want to be eating all the time. It's not the best thing probably for you. But like, if you have a salad a couple times a week, like, I'm not going to tell you that that's bad for you. Like, in my world, like, everyone should at least be striving to that and then finding if that actually works for them or not. And they only need to be concerned about that once, you should only be concerned about whether vegetables are good for you if every meal you eat is half a plate of is like half your plate is vegetables, and that's the way you eat consistently all the time. Then we can start nitpicking about, okay, is this vegetable, work for you or not, right? Like at that point, I'm willing to have that discussion. But if half your plate is, processed food, and you're eating cheesecake 7:30 in the morning, you're drinking sodas and big gulps and Slurpees and little Debbie snacks and all this other stuff and candy and all that, cookies and all that stuff. If that's what your diet looks like, the standard American diet. The discussion about whether vegetables are good for you is a no-brainer. Like vegetables are going to be better than what you're currently eating, no matter what, pretty much. So unless you're allergic to them, then okay, maybe we can have a different discussion. So I think we need to keep in context for those of us that are a little bit further down the path here. Those of us that might be primarily eating whole foods and have been doing so for a long period of time, and we're putting messaging out there that's saying vegetables are evil. You should avoid vegetables. You only need to eat these. Only these vegetables are meant to be eaten, et cetera, et cetera. Um, I think that's doing a disservice to the people around you who are reading that and then oh, I can only eat meat at this point. Like that's the only thing that's good because I've heard everything else is bad for you. And then what they have their vegan friend over there that's telling them their meat is bad for them, and no wonder why they're so confused, right? No one agrees on anything. Right? If we can at least have some common ground between all the different diet methodologies out there, like we used to have, everyone agreed that fruits and vegetables were okay. In general, they were pretty good for you, no matter who you talk to, right? And now all of a sudden, everything is controversial, and nothing is clear anymore. And I think that's hurting people more than it's helping them. Um, and just to pick on one specific example, I was just listening to a YouTube video torturing myself for some reason, where this guy who's a very big meat advocate was talking about how vegetables don't fix your gut, and he referenced the study where, um, high it was comparing high fiber diet to a fermented foods diet, and showing which was more beneficial for the health of your gut, which is who knows what that means anyways, because the gut is so diverse, but who knows. But anyways, in this paper, they basically said, found that the fermented foods were better than the high fiber diet, right? Like they had more diversity or whatever. However, they were measuring gut health, right? They found it to be more beneficial for your gut health. And it's like, see, that's why, vegetables are not good for your gut. But then if you read the paper, what fermented foods were these people eating in the study? A lot of it was fermented vegetables, like kimchi and sauerkraut and kombucha and etc. Yeah, there were some dairy products in there, like kefir and yogurts and stuff like that. But it was mostly vegetables, fermented vegetables, and the brine of the vegetables that they were, fermented in, this type of stuff. Like, so people like, again, they'll pick and choose how they and formulate something into to fit the messaging that they want. And it's not always, again, it's not everyone's going to go look at the study like I did and see exactly what it said, right? I mean, what were they actually eating? What were the fermented foods they were eating? So at the end of the day, I think that we need to put the message out there that vegetables are perfectly fine for you. Um, and once you start eating a decent amount of vegetables and your diet is devoid of processed foods, and you want to fiddle with the amount types of vegetables that you're consuming, by all means, go ahead. And if you find that lower vegetable intake is works better for you, great. I'm happy for you. Like that's cool. Like I'm super glad you did that experiment. But if you're worried about whether vegetables are good for you and you're consuming a diet that's high in processed foods, you know, that's not your concern. Like your concern is just getting to a point where your diet is mostly whole foods. And I think for those of us that are trying to help other people and improve the health of the people around us, and we find that you might find that vegetable intake is not so good for you, keep in mind that that's probably not going to be true for everyone around you, right? In that they probably will benefit from eating more vegetables in their diet than less vegetables in their diet. And it'll be easier for them to transition, right? Like the more restrictive you make something look, the harder it is for someone that's not there yet to move to that diet, right? If you tell them that the only thing they can eat is these cuts of meat and that nothing else, like who's gonna want to do that? Like at least give me some fruit and vegetables that I can eat, right? Some kind of enjoyment in life, right? And so we have to keep that in mind, right? We have to keep where the person is coming from in mind. And I just want to convey that messaging to other people as well, and provide some a different perspective maybe than others out on the internet are giving. Anyways, if you have any thoughts, comments, questions, concerns about this, please leave them in the comments below. Always happy to have a discussion about it. If you want to message me directly, great. I'm happy to have that conversation as well via direct message. And if you want to keep up to date with everything that I'm putting out on a weekly basis, please go to my website, rjbhealth.coach. Click the newsletter link at the top, and you can enter your email address and sign up for my newsletter. And I will email you all the content that I put out so you don't have to stalk me on social media. And if you're interested in one-on-one coaching, I do have one spot open at the moment. You can go to my website again at rjbhealth.coach and on the homepage, click schedule discovery call, and I will, you fill out that form and I will get back to you and we can set up a time to chat a little bit more about one-on-one coaching. With that, I hope everyone has an awesome weekend and I will talk to you all next week.